If I do my job right in this video, this will be the most comprehensive explanation and education about how to order your metal roof. We're starting to sell a lot of metal roofs in Florida, but the problem is a lot of roofers don't really know about metal. I would say metal is like a trade in itself. So when it comes to ordering the material, a lot of roofers are relying on us to do it for them. Between us and computer software to do their takeoffs. But there's a lot of project specific details that we're not getting from our customers. So we're making this video just to go over what those things are. So here on the screen, I have a cut sheet. We make these nice, pretty cut sheets. We have one for every panel profile. Obviously, the first thing we need to do is how many panels do we need and how long do they have to be? And there's two ways to work this out. And I'm going to explain both ways and the pros and cons of each. I am biased. I do like one way more than the other. So let's get into that now, because the first step of filling out a cut sheet is you got to tell us how many panels you need and how long do they have to be. So I've got this fancy little diagram. Don't get overwhelmed. We're going to do one thing at a time. But the conversation starts with, we're going to measure the roof ourselves and use what we call cut and flop or cut and flip method, or are we going to use a computer software and do a CAD takeoff to figure out our quantity of panels and the lengths of. We like the cut and flop for multiple reasons. Look on the CAD takeoff cut sheet. I've got 49 different panel lengths, whereas in the cut and flop, I have 17. So what that means is for the guys, the installers, it's a lot easier for them if they know how to install with the cut and flop method. It's a lot easier on the job because they don't have all these different panel lengths to get this roof done. This is a pretty big roof, 72 square, I believe, or 78 square. Look, for example, at this panel right here, 10'5". If I look at this whole roof, I've got a 10'5" panel here, a 10'5" panel here. And just briefly, if I look at the entire roof, I don't think I see another 10'5" panel on the entire roof. So what that means for the installer is they've got to sort through the giant stack of 49 different panel lengths in the driveway and put it exactly in this right spot, which is very difficult to do. And then what if somebody steps on that panel, or what if a pair of snips falls off the roof and dents that panel? Now the whole flow and the whole system is screwed up, and now you have to order extra panels. So the likelihood of needing to order extra panels and being wrong using the CAD takeoff is very high. Not to mention, when we do these off of an Eagle View. When we send it in, we're not positive that this run is going to be 25'4" here. So we still have to send someone out to the house and at least confirm the longest panel for each section. So if we're going to send someone out to do that, then it's my argument that the cut and flop method is a lot better because of not having to sort through all the panels, because of not screwing up one panel and screwing up this entire valley and getting stuck. And then just the guy's time on the ground sorting through all the extra panels. It's fine. A lot of roofers work this way. Honestly, I'd say the majority of roofers, I believe, are working this way. But we've always done the cut and flop. So I'm going to kind of explain what that is now, because again, with the cut and flop takeoff we did, I actually personally went and measured this roof. Here's my full cut sheet. I'm at 78.08 squares. The CAD takeoff got us at 81 squares. So it's actually even more waste to do it this way. Not all the time, but in a lot of cases, it's more waste because you're wasting on every single panel, you're wasting this cut. Whereas in the cut and flop, you are not. There's going to be certain roofs where cut and flop may come in a little more squares than the CAD takeoff. So I'm not going to say that the argument for cut and flop is you're going to use less waste, because like sometimes it'll be the other way. It's more just of ease of install and not getting screwed up, and just simplicity overall. So here's how the cut and flop works. I mean, obviously with the CAD takeoff, you see it. As I work my way up this valley, the panels get shorter and shorter and shorter on both sides. It works with hips the same way. With cut and flop, I'll show you. For this little section here, these four hips coming together at a point, obviously I need panels for this section right here where my green triangle is, right? But when I'm cutting these long panels, because I'm going to order them all at 6'5", I'm going to order this whole eave, however many panels I need here, it looks like about 10, I'm going to order them at 6'5". As the guys are installing, obviously the panels get shorter as you move down the hip and shorter as you move down the hip. And what that does, it means the waist grows. So as I cut down this hip, look, I get longer and longer panels as we work down the hip, and watch what happens. I'm just going to use those panels right here, and I virtually have zero waste. Same thing on this side. I work my way down the hip, and guess what? I'm going to use these extra panels right here. So what that means is to close this entire four-hip roof section, all I need to do is measure enough panels for two of the sides, and then the waste from those two sides will close the other two sides. So I'm essentially only going to order for this section, and then my cuts will close these sections, and then I'm closed. And guess what? Instead of having a 6'5" panel, a 5' panel, a 3'8" panel, a 2'4" panel, a 1' panel, I'm just going to order all panels at 6'5", so it gives the guys flexibility, and we just know the 6'5" panels are for this section, and it'll close it all together. And it works like this all around the roof. Some roofs are more symmetrical than others. I would say this is a perfect candidate to really show how the cut and flop's used, because this roof is super symmetrical. But let's go this section right here. I'm going to order these panels, this longest length from the bottom of the valley to the ridge. As I work my way up this valley, again, my waist becomes larger as we work up the valley. So as these panels get shorter, my waist becomes larger. And then watch what I can do with my waist over here. I can put it right here. I can put it right here. I'll rotate it in like that. And now we just close that valley. So these panels right here close this side of the valley, and then we flip them over here and we close this side. So what that means is when we're measuring this section right here, these 5' panels, I don't need to pass where this valley starts. I only need to order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 panels for this section. And then as I order these panels that come across here, I know the cuts in the valley will close the other side of the valley. And again, all the panels will be the same length. We don't have any waste. And we're just flipping and using our cuts on other areas of the roof. So that's why we like it, because we have less panels to deal with. We've got more flexibility for screw ups on the job, less chance of running short on panels, because to cover for waste in the cut and flop method, we're just going to send 2 to 4 extra panels of the longest length. So no matter where we're going to need them, we don't know where we may need them, but because we're ordering the longest panel length, we have flexibility to use our extras. Whereas in this system, the CAD takeoff, there's no flexibility. If I screw up one of these panels, there's a good chance it's going to throw the whole thing off, and I'm going to have to order extra panels. And like you can just see the complexity, 49 panels versus 17. It's been our experience that the more experienced metal roofers like this method. I've got installers that if we send them to a job with this kind of takeoff, this kind of panel breakdown in the driveway, they'd probably want to go home because it's just headaches. It's a lot of sorting through panels. There's a lot that can go wrong. So I just wanted to start with that, because the first step of the cut sheet is how many panels do I need and how long do they need to be. Then after that, we've got our basic accessories. This is just based on your roof inspection. How many boots are there? How many goosenecks are there? And what sizes are those goosenecks? Butyl tape, caulk, screws, clips, rivets, that's all dependent on the job. I mean, we have basic calculations for how many screws per square, but it depends on your install method. So it's not very hard to figure out your accessories. It's just quick inspection and then some simple formulas with math. What I really want to get into next, though, is the trim. So we have these nice, pretty cut sheets. We've got all the standard trim pieces listed, and then we've got our questions that we want to hear from you about. So I'm going to try to go through these as best I can, because filling out your trim pieces is not as simple as, okay, I've got 377 feet of eaves. I'm going to need 40 pieces of drip edge, putting it on a piece of paper and moving on. It is not this simple. We can use eagle views for quantity of trim pieces, but I need a little more detail. And really, we as metal roofers need a little more detail than just, I've got 220 feet of ridge. I need 25 ridge caps. We need more detail. So that's what I'm going to get into now. So we have these cut sheets, and we tried to build them in a way so that the questions or the detail we need from you is self-explanatory. For example, I'll start with bullnose drip edge. You notice there's 2 different bullnose drip edge. One picture is on a 90, the other picture is with a slope. Well, they're both listed because we're not sure which one you're going to need. You would have to tell us that. We also have these face measurements, 2 inch, 2.5, 3 inch. We can customize these to any length of face you want, but these are kind of the standard ones. So this is the face of the drip edge, the part that's visible from the ground, the part that hangs over the fascia. Then we have obviously quantity, how many, but we have pitch lines for you to give us the slope. So there's details like this, and we've got questions. So like gable rake, you'll notice all we're asking for is the quantity, because that's all we need from you. If we know you need 7 gable rakes, we know how to bend it, we know how to make it, because it's not like bullnose where we need all this extra detail. So you don't see those questions asked in gable rake. Whereas with hip cap, you can see we've got quantity and we've got pitch. We give you 2 spots for hip caps just in case there's different slopes on the roof. And because we're asking you for the pitch, that means we need to know the pitch to bend the piece. We can't guess for you. So I just wanted to start with that, is that on our cut sheets, if you don't see pitch, it's because we don't need it. If you don't see blank lines for you to fill in measurements, we don't need it. But if you do, we're asking you for it. So you can tell me you need 7 skylight flashings, but if you leave the rest of this stuff blank, we can't really bend the skylight flashing, because we need to know how tall it needs to be and how long you want this saddle measurement. So I did my best to put some pictures together down here, kind of sloppily thrown all over this cut sheet, but we're just going to go one section of the cut sheet by one, and then I'm going to zoom in on these pictures that kind of show you the considerations we're supposed to make when we're ordering drip edge. So, okay, bullnose drip edge. Like I said, we're asking you for the pitch here, the quantity obviously, and then we're asking you for face measurement. So us as roofers, this is how we determine the answers to those questions. This picture right here, you can tell that the fascia is angled back, whereas here, the fascia is plumb to the ground. It runs straight to the ground. Well, look at the angle that this would create versus when it's angled back. Well, when the fascia is angled back, a 90-degree drip edge is going to fit in there nice and tight. But if the fascia is plumb to the ground, now that's why you have this open angle. So we want to know the pitch of the roof you're installing this drip edge so that it sits nice and tight and can carry this not 90-degree angle. So if the roof was a 312 and the whole roof was a 312, you would tell me, okay, I need 32 pieces of bullnose on a 312. If you have different roof slopes and you need bullnose on each of them, you'd have to write in here, I need 7 on a 212 for the front, but then the back is an 812, so I need 6 pieces on an 812 for the back, and you would need to tell us that. It's pretty simple. But if we send 90-degree drip edge to a 712 roof and the fascia is plumb to the ground, you're going to have big problems. Chances are you're not even going to be able to install it because it's going to be hanging off the front. You're not going to have enough nailer on the roof side to nail it to the roof. The next thing would be the face measurements. So this can be super important or it can be more personal preference. The cases where it would be super important are right here. If you've got a homeowner or property owner that's saving their gutters and you've got gutter spikes and the existing drip edge is 2 inches, the face of the drip edge is 2 inches, and the gutter spikes are right under it, well, if you don't say anything and we send our standard 3-inch drip edge, you're not going to be able to install it without pulling the hangers out and screwing them back into the drip edge. It's extra work. You're putting holes in the drip edge. Whereas if you can note, okay, existing drip edge is 2 inches, the spikes are right under it, let's go back with 2-inch face drip edge so that we don't have to mess with the gutters. Another consideration might be that if it's small 2x4 fascia, we may not want to overwhelm the fascia with a 3-inch face so that we're pretty much hiding the entire white fascia board. It's probably going to be more aesthetic if we go 2.5 or 2. So I would say in gutters, it's required, or you're going to be ordering a whole new set of bullnose if we miss this detail, and then you have an aesthetic component to it as well. Okay, next piece, valley. Valleys are pretty self-explanatory. We've got your valley cleats in the same section as your valleys. For standing seam systems, we're always going to install the standing seam W valley. We do have break valleys if for whatever reason you need that, maybe crickets, maybe goofy details, but typically 99% of the time we're ordering the standing seam valley. And here's what it looks like. Hold on, I just clicked something. And here's what it looks like. We install the valley metal and we install the cleats on each side, and then the panels get cut at an angle, a hem folded, and locked into the valley cleats on each side. So you need 2 valley cleats for every 1 valley. Okay, counter flashing. This is, I would say, a longer conversation. I'm going to try to keep it simple, but there's different ways to counter flash. And all the word counter flash means is When I install my flashing along the wall, how do I stop rainwater from coming down the wall and getting behind the flash? Installing the flashing along the wall, it's going to keep rainwater out of the roof to wall joint from the roof side. But we have to waterproof the top of the flashing that sits on the face of the wall. So how do we do that? There's different ways to do that. And if you look at our cut sheet, we've got stucco stop pieces. We've got our reglet, which I'm going to get into. And then we've got caulk lips on flashing. So like a one-piece self-counter flashing piece of flashing. So this lip is just meant to be caulked. Not my favorite way, but honestly common because of the ease of install, but not my favorite way for a bunch of reasons. So let's start with stucco stop. Okay, we have two types of stucco stop. We have stucco stop without a caulk lip, so just straight down, bumps out off the wall, and this bottom face covers our flashing, keeps water out. So the flashing gets installed first. Well, I'll get to it. The flashing gets installed behind the stucco stop. Right here. So this piece without the caulk is pretty much always installed in new construction, like right here. So we don't want the stucco guys putting stucco on our brand new metal roof. That would be crazy. A lot of times we want to paint the house too before we put the metal roof on. So we're not painting the brand new roof. So it's common, we'll come in, we'll put this stucco stop on the wall. We'll seal the top of it. This is just an in-progress photo I found. The stucco guys will come in, they'll run their stucco to this point, they'll paint the house, and then we'll come in after and slide our new flashing up under the face of the stucco stop, and it looks great. Looks great. Never going to have water in there. Everything's behind the stucco. Water comes down the stucco on top of the roof and gets off the roof. When we're re-roofing, though, that's when you'll see the stucco stop with the caulk lip, because it's meant to be face nailed on the outside of the stucco or the outside of the siding, rather than behind it, because we're re-roofing. So we're trying to keep the cost down for the homeowner, not have to redo all the siding on this wall. So we'll install the flashing on the wall, and then we'll install this stucco stop with a caulk lip on top of the siding to keep water out from the flashing, but then we're caulking it. So not the best way because we're relying on caulk, but it is what it is. I mean, we're re-roofing. Everybody doesn't have money to go the extra mile. It's just not in the budget to do it, I would say, the right way, someone would say. So this is a method, and we caulk it. The other downside is if we have a standing seam concealed fastener system here, but we have exposed fasteners on the wall, well, that looks a little goofy. I mean, the selling point of standing seam is no fasteners, but then we blow these giant fasteners through the wall, and they're visible forever. But it is a method. Then we have, for our next counter flashing method, we have reglet. So here's what the piece looks like. It's got a bend meant to go inside the wall, a little channel here where it folds back on itself to keep water out of the wall if it was ever to get in there. And then it's got the same face as the stucco stop for the flashing to be tucked behind it. And the way we install this one is before we put the panels, we'll cut this line where it needs to be for the reglet. This is a 1-inch deep line cut into the stucco. The reason we cut it before we put the panels is because it's a dusty job. So we don't want to get all that dust and rock and cement on top of our metal. So the first thing we'll do is we'll measure, we'll chalk a line in the wall, and we'll cut this line. Then we put our panels, then we put our flashing, no caulk lip on the flashing, it's just tight to the stucco. Then we'll throw some caulk inside this line we cut, and then we'll embed this piece right here over top of the flashing and inside the wall, and then we'll seal it again. So because it's embedded inside the stucco, it works very well because as water comes down the wall, it can't get inside here because the metal's going inside the wall. It's sealed inside the wall. And that's why we have this little extra channel here. So if water did ever get through, the reglet will catch the water and it won't actually enter the wall. This little picture, this little bend on itself is actually a little bigger. But that's what it's for. So we like this, but it's only an option for stucco. But we really like this because it achieves the new construction look. Like if you notice this picture here, the finish of it looks very similar to this picture here, but we didn't have to cut the stucco out and put new stucco because we could do that too when we're re-roofing, but it's not in the budget for everybody to go through all that work. So we can kind of achieve almost the same level of waterproofing as new construction, definitely the same look without cutting out the stucco. So we really like the reglet. Really like the reglet. Sorry for scrolling around. And just to see it again, there it is. Panels, flashing, and cut the line. seal the line. We blow it out real good before we put caulking in there. And then we embed that in there, and that's it. Done deal. I'll just briefly touch on this bottom one, the caulk lip, which I mentioned, which I really don't like. I don't have any pictures showing it. But in this case, there's no second piece of metal. There's no stucco stop. There's no reglet. We just will bend the flashing with a little lip here. So you can see it there. Ugly screws, caulking. This is a tough detail with the step back. There's a longer wall though, and it's done the same way. Let me find that. Here we go. Here we go. Let's try to zoom. Yeah, so here you go. Flashing on top of the wall. It's ugly. It looks bad. Nothing's behind the stucco. This is a lazy man's way to flash this wall. So don't really like this method. For 5V exposed fastener though, it's reasonable because you've got screws everywhere, so it doesn't really mess with the look of the job. It just kind of blends well with the 5V. With standing seam though, it's definitely not the best option. So let's come back. Okay, next we'll get into Cricut. So Cricut, like I said, we're leaving things blank when we need answers from you. So we need pitch of the bend. It can be a 90 if it's going to be on a sidewall. We need quantity, obviously. But then we have these measurement lines blank. So you can see, like, we give you the measurement of reglet here. We're telling you it's 3 inches. We're not asking for it. You can always customize anything. You can cross that 3 and make it a 2. You can make it a 4, whatever you want. Everything's custom. But here we're not giving you a standard measurement of the Cricut because there is none. So we're going to need it from you. Cricuts can be used in all sorts of places. I've got a picture example here. This is a great place for it. It's tough to see up under this return, but one of the benefits of metal is we can cover this entire area in one seamless sheet. It goes on top of the panels below it, and then the panels above it overlap it. So this is a super common place for leaks, especially with tile roofs. But the way we do these with Cricuts is amazing. There's no way for it to leak because it's seamless. So we use a 4x10, 4 foot by 10 foot flat sheet to make this Cricut for you. We need to know how high up the wall you want it. So in this case, I would have put a 5 here, and then I want the rest of the sheet. So 5 inches here, 4 foot is 48 inches. I put 43 inches here. So basically I'm getting an entire flat sheet with just 5 inches up the wall. And I need it at a 90 because it's a sidewall and there's no slope on a sidewall. And now my guys can field fabricate the rest, but now this flashing is going up the wall, out over here. Everything's overlapping us. There's no seams in it. And then we installed a reglet on the wall side. And now this is a super waterproof return because I used a Cricut in. Cricuts can be used in other places. Backside of chimneys is super common. Sometimes you'll have low slope Cricuts where you don't need the wall portion of this Cricut. And in that case, just order a flat sheet and the guys can do their things with a 4x10 flat sheet. So whenever we're looking at Cricuts, we want to understand the width because we know the width of our flat sheets is 48 inches. So anything like 36 inches and under, that gives us, we can cover the entire Cricut in a flat sheet, and then we're overlapping the sides. You understand what I'm saying? I just lost the math in my head. But there's a lot of uses for Cricuts, and this is one of them. But again, we're trying to talk about filling out the cut sheet. So like I need the measurements here. Next, slope transitions. Another little bit of a detailed talk on slope transitions because there's multiple types of slope transitions. So we have 2 transition flashings. We've got this one first, which I'll cover. So it's flat on the top part, and then it comes down and has a hem. This section that comes down and has a hem is meant to come over top of panels. So this transition is used when you have a flat roof that's above your metal panels, which this is my guy's foot. He's standing on the flat roof. There's a metal roof below it. So this is the transition we need. It comes flat on the flat roof so that the top layer of flat roof can overlap it. And then it comes downward on top of the panels below and locks into a Z. So that's what this piece is. Flat roof here, metal roof underneath, and a hem for a Z. So in this installation, we install the panels underneath the flat first. Then we put Z's in the panels. Then we install our base sheet on the flat roof. Then we install the transition on top of the base sheet and locks into the Z's on the panels below it. And then when we're done, the cap sheet gets installed over. So now as water comes down this flat roof, it gets directed on the transition flashing and off the roof. You can see in this picture, we have all 3 of the possible slope transitions in one picture, which is cool. So then this one is obviously different. We've got metal on the lower and metal on the upper. So it's like a metal to metal slope transition. And that's when we use this piece right here. So the bottom part of this transition has a hem for a Z. The top does not. That's because for this installation, we install the panels below first up to the pitch break. Then we install Z's on the lower panels. Then we install our transition before these panels above. We install the transition. It lays flat here, comes out over top of these panels, locks into a Z, and then we install our panels above. And this is a nice waterproof slope transition. So those are the two slope transition pieces you would order. I need the pitches of the roof slopes and the slope transition, obviously. And our standard measurement is 8" by 6" for both pieces. You can customize this if you'd like, but 8" by 6" seems to work well. And then in this picture, you'll notice we've got a flat roof underneath metal panels, which we didn't talk about. In this case, we don't need a special transition piece. We just need to finish the flat roof before these above panels go on. Install a valley cleat or a flat clip. We've got a special piece for this that some guys like to use. It's a little stronger. And then we install our panels. So flat roof completely done, flat clip or valley cleat here, and then the above panels get installed. With a mechanical roof, you don't need to install the slope transition flashing. It's the only panel we offer. It's the only panel anyone offers that you can carry the pitch break with one long panel. So we trim the standing seams, we bend the panel in the pitch break, as you can see here, and we carry the slope transition with one panel. Looks sharp. We usually let homeowners decide which way they want to go. It's actually a little cheaper too because you don't have to pay for all this transition flashing. It's obviously a lot of flashing. A lot of times when you have this detail, it's on the whole house. So the price and cost of this is a lot higher because you've got all this transition flashing. It's a 6x8 piece of metal, so it's big. You've got a Z for it and a valley cleat for it. So less metal, less material for this one. But some people really like the way that this slope transition looks. And then if the homeowner's not going with a mechanical roof, they don't have the option. So that's everything on slope transitions. Next, ridge caps. Oh no, I skipped skylights. Skylight flashing. And on the cut sheet, it says skylight flashing. But this is anything with a curb. So I have right here a picture of a solar powered attic fan that's a self-flash attic fan that somebody, not us, installed on a metal roof. We hate this because look, there's 11 tubes of caulk and we've just cut a circle across two panels and caulked the shit out of it. Obviously, this picture where the solar tube, this could be an attic fan, is set on a curb. We have a flashing kit for it. So although the cut sheet says skylight flashing, it's for anything with a curb. And it's got a shape to it, but there's a lot of blanks here. Look, we're giving you one measurement. We're giving you one measurement, which is 1". This is the part that overlaps the curb, the part that you can't see, the part that the unit covers. Because we have a 2x4 or a 2x6 curb underneath right here. So we only give you the 1" measurement because we don't know what size curb you're gonna use. Are you gonna use a 2x4 or a 2x6? Our preference is for 1" standing seam systems or even 5E. We like to use a 2x4 to build the curb. And for 1.5" and higher, we like to use a 2x6 because it gets the skylight off the roof a little higher because the standing seam's higher. So, this is just our preference, so we don't really, like, everybody might have their own little rules on how they do it. I will say a 2x4 curb just straight up won't work on an 1.5" system, so this is a good rule of thumb. So for 1" systems, we're going to use a 2x4 for the curb, and for 1.5" and higher, we're going to use a 2x6. But we don't know that. We're not installing the roof for you, so we're asking for you to give us the height of this skylight flashing. So if I was going to use a 1" system and my curb is 2x4, we've got two separate pieces of skylight flashing we need to order. Notice one has a hem, the other one does not. We call this a saddle flashing because it goes on top of the skylight. So let me come over here. Let's see. Right here. So on this skylight, we have flashing on the bottom and the sides that sit on Z's, but then the saddle on the top does not sit on a Z, sits flush with the plywood because the panels from above have to overlap it. So the process for this is we install the panels on the sides and the bottom, but before we install separate smaller panels above the skylight, we have to flash the skylight. So we install Z's on the bottom, Z's on the sides. We install the flashing on the Z's. Then we install our saddle on the top. It overlaps the flashing this way. And then we install the panels above. So as water comes down from above, it hits the backside of this skylight and runs off the roof. So that's why there's no hem here, because there's no Z for the saddle. But there's a hem here because it does get locked into a Z. So the height of these two pieces are going to be different, because this piece for the sides and the bottom of the skylight sit on a Z, so it sits up an inch, whereas this one sits flush to the roof, so it's an inch larger. So if this was going to be a 2x4 curb, a 2x4 measures 3.5, my height on the saddle would be 3.5, whereas my height on the flashings, because it sits on the Z, is 3.5 minus the 1 inch Z, which is 2.5. And then your width of the flashing, 4 inches or 5 inches is the standard. The length of the saddle that sits on the roof can be 8 inches, I would say, at a minimum, all the way up to 12 inches if you want to be super safe. And that's just how far the panels from above going to overlap the saddle that it sits on. If I go 12 inches, my metal on the top of the skylight's all the way up here and getting overlapped like crazy. If I go 8, we're still safe and it's getting overlapped a little less. So that's curve and skylight flashings. We did transitions. Now let's do ridge caps. Ridge caps are pretty self-explanatory. Hips and ridges get installed the same way. We install a Z on either side of the hip or ridge, and then the ridge cap locks into it. That's why we have hems on both sides of the ridge cap. The thing I do want to just point out briefly is the pitch. So if the entire roof is a 512, here's a good picture because I've got hips and I've got ridges. If the whole roof is a 512, we're going to order the ridge caps on a 512. It's super important to get the pitch right on hips. That's why we're asking for it on the cut sheet. Because if you don't get it right, if we bend it at a 712, it wouldn't lock into the Z's and it would look all goofy. Honestly, it wouldn't even really work. So the slope on the ridge caps has to be right. But the hips carry a different angle. Because they're running from the bottom of the roof to the top of the roof at a 45-degree angle, they don't carry the same slope. So a good rule of thumb is if my roof is a 512, I'm going to order the ridge caps at a 512, but I'm going to subtract 2 and order the hips at a 312. So on our cut sheet, we have 2 sets of quantity, 2 sets of pitches, because you may have different slopes or roofs, but that's the rule of thumb. Ridge cap is the true slope of the roof. Hip cap is true slope -2, and you should be fine. Okay, gables. There's 2 ways to handle gables. You can install bullnose drip edge like on the eaves, and then hem the sides of the panels and lock them in here. And in this case, it's required because the way the gable doesn't go straight up the roof like this, it carries an angle. We've got 2 panels that tie into this gable. So if we installed a gable like this piece, we'd actually get water trapped that would run down this panel. It would have nowhere to get out. It would get stuck between the gable and the standing seam here. So in this case where the gable's not straight and it carries this angle, we're going to have to use bullnose, which, just to cover it real quick while we're on it, we did this one already. This would be hanging off the gable end. We would bend the side of the panel with a 1-inch hem and we would lock it tight on this bullnose, just like we do at the bottoms of it. But more times than not, the gable is straight and we can install a gable rake. I think it's a cleaner finish on the side. Some guys like this. It's more personal preference. This is a harder install, definitely harder to make it look good. The experts can. This is easier to install and it gives you a nice clean face of metal here. I think this one looks nice. It's easier to install. So we elect to go this route unless we're in this situation here. And right here, you can see the gable rake piece. It's got a hem on the top and a hem on the bottom. And that's because the roof side of the gable gets locked into a Z here. So that's why you have an open hem on the rake. And then the face side has a hem because we use what's called a rake cleat. And it looks like this. So this piece gets fastened to the outside of the fascia, while this Z gets screwed to the top of the roof and the gable's held in place from both sides, similar to a ridge cap. The Z closures, I guess I'll get to after the flashings. Okay, we give you a bunch of options here for flashing. So starting at the sidewall flashing, sidewalls obviously carry up the roof, whereas head walls are where the roof ends. You'll notice for the head walls, we're asking for the pitch because we need the pitch. This is not a 90-degree bend right here. So if this roof is a 512, I put 512 in here so that the head wall flashing sits nice where the roof meets the wall. Whereas on sidewalls, it's always going to be a 90-degree piece. And because of that, we don't ask you for the pitch. So if you just go through our cut sheet and take your time, if we're asking you something, it's because we need it. We tried to build them that way. We give you 3 options. Standard sidewall is 4" by 5". So, 90% of the time, this is going to be what you need. But we also give you a 4x5 with a caulk clip if you want to go that route. Then we give you a blank one for custom flashing. A lot of times we'll use 4" by 10" pieces of flashing for areas like this little return, just to get this all closed up and underlapping the drip edge from above. If it only went 4" up the fascia, it wouldn't get under this drip edge, so it wouldn't exactly be waterproof. So a lot of times we'll use taller pieces of flashing for this. Really, anything you could run into, you may want a taller piece of flashing, so we give you a blank one for you to tell us. So standard 4x5, custom for different details, and then one with a caulk clip. Again, don't need pitch on a sidewall, but we do need pitch on a head wall. And it's the same situation. Standard 4x5. If you run into a situation where you want it larger, maybe, let us know what you want. Give us the quantity and the pitch. And then again, caulk clip if you want to go that route. Z's. So it would be my suggestion to fill out your entire cut sheet and then do the Z's last. So any piece that has these hems is likely going to lock into a Z. So my formula for the Z's is going to be, for every ridge and every hip cap I have, I'm going to need 2 Z's. So I would do ridges, my ridge caps plus my hip caps, and then I would times it by 2. And then for my gables, my flashings, and my skylight flashings, see everything with this little hem, I'm just going to need 1. So if I had 10 sidewall, 5 head wall, and 5 gables, I'd get my ridges and hips, I'd times them by 2, and then I'd add my 5 gables, plus my 5 head wall, plus my 10 sidewall, and then that's how many Z's are. So any piece that has this open hem is meant to lock into a Z. It's one of the best things about metal roofing is everything is folded and locked together. It's also why it probably takes the most, I'd say, trade craft to install. Perforated Z closure, I just realized I didn't put a diagram in for this. It gets installed the same way as the hips and ridges, a Z on either side, but at the ridge where we have the cut at the peak, we'd have it open, and our Z actually has holes in it with a foam closure we put behind it, and that's what allows air to get out through the ridge. Pretty self-explanatory. It gets installed the same way. We order the same ridge cap at the same pitch. Just the only difference is instead of a solid Z here, we install a Z with holes, and we put a foam closure for insects behind it, and that's our ridge fin. So there it is. I tried to go through, I tried to take my time, I tried to have visual explanations of everything. We'll see how this video came out. I hope it helped, and obviously Metal Ops is always available to answer your questions. It's what we like to do. That's why we make these videos in the first place.